Is this a pencil?
No. This is a pencil box.
Yes, it's a pencil box.
If this is your impression of China, be prepared for a few surprises. China is a country of contrast, of changing faces with many expressions. This is China on stage, preserving her cultural past. This is China on the street, creating a new image for her future.
Hi everyone, I'm Bob Grip. China is a foreign country in many senses of the word. Not only is it physically far away from the Gulf Coast, but culturally, it's a million miles away. Recently, Alabama Governor George Wallace and a number of businessmen traveled to China to try to drum up business for places like the Alabama State Docks. TV 10 reporter Carolyn Martin and photographer Robbie Chandler traveled with the governor to China. They brought back stories of business and especially stories of people.
Bob, we met a lot of people and visited a lot of interesting places in China. For the next 30 minutes, we'll share with you some of our experiences in the Orient. Now, we may shatter a few of the Americanized stereotypes of the Chinese and the world's oldest civilization. Governor Wallace made history when he landed at Wuhan. His was the first private plane ever allowed to fly within the People's Republic of China. Even U.S. presidents aren't granted that privilege. The Alabama governor apparently was because of his handicaps. That special treatment set the tone for the governor's visit to the Orient. Wallace went to China to make friends and open doors. China is an untapped source of revenue. Wallace wants Alabama in on the ground floor of development. Business in China is built on a foundation of trust and friendship. In the Hubei province, Wallace signed a friendship agreement with the leaders there, officially beginning negotiations. Throughout the trip, we were more than potential business deals. We were honored visitors. We always traveled in a motorcade. Traffic was stopped to ease our way. People watched to see who was getting the special treatment. I was as curious about the Chinese as they were about me. To get acquainted, I shed the government status, left the officials behind, and went out among the people. Sitting on the banks of the Yangtze River is the city of Wuhan. It is the capital of the Hubei province in the east-central section of China. Wuhan is the largest port on the Yangtze River and a major transportation center for Chinese products. A vital part of Wuhan's economic development is this bridge you see behind me. This is the bridge over the Yangtze River, the third longest river in the world. The Chinese say the bridge turned a natural chasm into a thoroughfare, connecting Wuhan with the north and south. The 30-year-old bridge is a tourist attraction, not because of its economic impact, but because of its construction. It's a double-decker. Cars and trucks travel on top, trains move underneath. The Chinese insisted we visit this bridge during our stay to show their interest in furthering development and trade. Wuhan is home to 4 million people. I managed to meet a few of them by going into the neighborhood near my hotel and striking up a non-verbal conversation. If music is the universal language, children are the universal interpreters. Through them, I was able to communicate with the adults. I couldn't understand what they were saying, but I could understand what they were feeling. Their faces told it all. They loved their kids, and they wanted me to love them too.
Can you come to me? I'm okay.
That little boy was a real ham, but not all the kids wanted to be American TV stars. If you've ever tried to get your child to perform, you'll empathize with this proud grandfather.
Hi, can you say bye-bye?
You say bye-bye. Bye-bye rồi, bye-bye rồi. Bye-bye rồi.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Tắm rửa bye-bye đi.
The children were my favorite people because they were so natural. They were curious, but not impressed by a TV camera. These little boys were hunting bugs along the street. They were so intent on finding their bugs, they didn't even know they were being taped until a big brother interrupted their play. The children are China's future. They're being prepared for a world outside their city and country. It is 7 o'clock in the morning. The school day begins in Wuhan. We could see the elementary school from our hotel and hear the loudspeaker piping music outside to the kids. Every morning began this way. Sometimes an American song was blended in with the Chinese lyrics. Learning English is very important in China. Here at the Wuhan Dachao Middle School, English is a regular class for the teenage students. After their lunch break at home, the kids return to school for 3 hours of classes in the afternoon.
Is this a book?
Yes.
Good, Robbie, sit down.
To understand how difficult it is for these students to learn English, imagine trying to teach your teenager Chinese. Everything is different. Wu Kuai Li is one of the English teachers here. He lives at the school and is proud of his profession. He says teachers are the engineers of mankind. Why did you decide to become an English teacher?
English teacher. I'm interested in English because by the way, by means of English, we can know the situation in the world.
What's this?
This is a desk.
Is this a child?
No, it isn't.
It's a desk.
Li Chun-yan is the other English instructor. 5 out of the 6 school days, she teaches English in the afternoon.
For students, the most difficult thing is to remember English new words. They cannot remember them.
Do they think we have a strange alphabet? Our letters are strange?
Yes.
After school, we gave 2 students the ultimate exam, an interview on American television. You'll notice the principal in the background seemed to be more nervous than the students. He tried to help them make a good impression. What do you think of America?
American is great country.
Wait a minute. Can she tell me? Okay. Tell me, what do you think of America?
American is working. It's hard working. It's hard working.
What do you think of English language?
English is easy to learn.
Do you like rock music?
Yes, I am. Yes, I like.
Do you like to dance?
Yes, I like.
We had walked into the school unannounced without permission, and we were warmly welcomed. We thanked them with small presents from Mobile. Thank you. And a pin for the principal. We have to be nice to the principal. Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much for talking with us. This has been great. The children are learning a language which will open economic doors in the future. China is becoming trade conscious and wants to do business with the United States. This sales plant in Wuhan is a joint venture between the Hubei province and the state of Ohio. The two countries share the expenses, management, and profits. The state of Alabama wants to set up a similar operation. Until a few years ago, most Chinese didn't know what a profit was. Now that has changed. Profits are part of the new Chinese culture. You can find somebody selling something nearly everywhere. These women set up a tea stand on the corner. You buy the jar of tea, drink it, then return the jar to the women. They fill it up for the next customer. This is a small, simple business in Wuhan. It gets a lot wilder. This is the marketplace in Wuhan. A few years ago, these streets were empty, but this is the new China, and today, free enterprise is thriving. You can buy just about anything here in the market if you can stand the crowds and the noise. There's no doubt the meat is fresh. Most of it is still alive and kicking. Dead or alive, it's all hanging out for your inspection. You won't find any cash registers here. Price is based on weight. A primitive scale is used to determine how much your beans or fish or vegetables will cost. The market winds through several streets and blocks. If you spend the day walking here, you may need the local cobbler to repair your shoes. Business was hopping when I dropped by. This man was also doing well. He runs a sidewalk cafe. The kitchen is in the street. You choose the food, he cooks it in the wok. Today's menu, pig's tongue with vegetables, served hot and fresh for 20 cents a plate. The market offers the Chinese a chance to make a little money and raise their standard of living, which is very low by our measurements. Housing and utilities are subsidized by the government, but there are cutbacks planned for the future. The most expensive items for Chinese are clothing and cooking oil. Privacy is a luxury most Chinese who live in the city will never be able to afford. Crowds are a way of life here. There is always someone around you, even when you go home. This is the neighborhood across from my hotel, high-rise apartments packed with people. The bathroom is across the street, a public porcelain building more impressive than the housing. One of the apartment tenants, Mr. Chow, agreed to take me inside his flat. It was an 8-by-12 room with scrubby walls and a bare light hanging from a 10-foot ceiling. Mr. Chow was very proud of his apartment and possessions: a bed, desk, dresser, and bicycle. My visit was a first for both of us. We shared a mutual curiosity and parted as friends. You are what is your name? Mr.
Zhao.
Tao. Mr. Tao. Okay. Carolyn. Martin. Good. Nice to meet you. Huh?
Well.
Shake on it. All right. Mr. Chow and most other Chinese travel by bicycle. The streets flow like rivers of two-wheelers. It's quicker than walking, but it takes more courage. Anybody who gets on the streets is a target. There are lines, but no laws. Right-of-way is determined by the loudest horn and strongest will. This cab ride was one of my exciting experiences on the streets. We never hit anybody, but we had several close calls. Cab and bus rides were such wild experiences, I decided to try something more traditional, the rickshaw. It offered a slower pace, a nice change from the pushed, rushed flow of the streets and sidewalks. I didn't see many Chinese in rickshaws. They're not as unique to the locals as they are to the tourists. Wuhan recently opened to foreign tourism. One of the stops during our visit was this Buddhist temple. It was built during the Ming Dynasty 400 years ago. Tourists can join the worshippers as they light incense and candles to Buddha to get his attention for their prayers. The temple is home to 35 monks who pray and study here, sometimes exposed to the tourists. Inside the temple, paper representing money is burned for worship. Outside, you can use the real thing to buy a souvenir snapshot. Not many Americans have visited Wuhan. We journalists were especially a curiosity to the people there. Every time we went out on the street, we attracted a crowd. Just taking notes fascinated the Chinese. They would come right up to me and stare at my notepad. It was sometimes suffocating, but never scary. They were always friendly and communicated with smiles. Occasionally, our TV camera frightened our subjects. When we tried to tape this woman's children, she hurried them away. Although we tried to avoid making a scene, sometimes we couldn't help it. My interview with an English-speaking man turned into a roadblock. What do you think of Americans?
Oh, I like Americans.
Have you ever been to America?
But I have never been to America, but I like to be to America.
We created such a crowd, we stopped traffic and were asked to leave.
Yeah. I've heard about America, and I like American.
Have you ever heard of Alabama?
Okay.
What is he saying?
He said they're very much crowded here.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Carolyn, I'm surprised you had as much freedom as you did. You went around, nobody bothered you, nobody followed you.
Well, it was sort of a pleasant surprise to us too, Bob. We didn't have an escort. As you saw, we were allowed to go out on the streets at any time. No one seemed to mind. We did, however, find a little bit different story when we moved on to Beijing. That's what we Americans call Peking. When we got to Beijing, our movements were a little bit more restricted.
Beijing is a huge flat city of 8 million people. It lies on a plain in northeastern China, about 100 miles from the coast. Beijing is a city under construction. Cranes top the skyline, building new housing for Beijing's masses. The people here were not as impressed with Americans as they were in Wuhan. I could walk down the street without a crowd. Nobody seemed to notice. Beijing is courting tourism. My hotel was a modern high-rise with nearly all the conveniences of home. I could even get ice and a Coke here, which was impossible in Wuhan. The shopping was also better in Beijing. This friendship store offered several floors of tourist temptations with cheap price tags. This was one of the few places credit cards were welcomed, but it was much more interesting to deal in cash.
还有这个15，一共96。96。
96? Okay. 96. All right, let's see here what we got. 50? Is that like 50?
So,
two of these?
Two of these.
Two of these.
Yes. Or you can. You want to get them small?
Yeah. 50 and
10.
So it's 50, 60, 70, 80, 90.
Okay.
95. 6. Okay. 96.
Yes. Right.
1. Right?
96 yuan.
I saw a different side of China in this city, a cleaner, more sophisticated, westernized side. I went into the grocery store during rush hour to buy some candy. It lacked the character of Wuhan's street market, but it was still a long way from our stores. It was a small shop with few choices and an abacus instead of a cash register.
Beijing not only looks different, but it feels different. This is the capital city. The seat of government is here, and you feel that governmental presence. Life is more structured in Beijing. Even during our visit, our hosts were upset when we made changes in our schedule, when we had minds of our own.
This is the China you usually see on television, Tiananmen Square. It's the largest square in the world. The Communist Party monuments and memorials are here. As a guest of the government, I saw a lot of official China. Every night was booked with a formal banquet. The feast included at least 20 dishes, all elaborately prepared. It was very special treatment and quite impressive, but I wanted to taste the normal, everyday fare and eat some real Chinese cooking. To do that, I left the banquet hall one night and went to the streets. It is Friday night in Beijing, China. Things are hopping at the Tongcheng Yin restaurant. This is the real thing. You won't find these people eating chop suey or chow mein. They never heard of it. They're feasting on chicken with garlic shoots, scrambled eggs with tomatoes, and spicy shrimp. We smiled our way into this restaurant with the help of our interpreter, Ellen. We wanted to experience real Chinese cooking. We did, and then some. It seems you need more than a smile to shoot in China. You need a permit. We didn't have one. The police and the manager wanted us to leave until our interpreter convinced them we were tourists taking pictures for ourselves. The manager gave his okay and sent us upstairs away from his customers.
Thank you.
With permission to photograph ourselves and a couple of friends, we continued with dinner. We went to the menu board and chose from each column, then gave our waiter the order: fungus soup, bamboo shoots with eggs, and cauliflower with shrimp. In a real Chinese restaurant, chopsticks aren't an option. If you want to eat, you use them. That's sometimes easier said than done, even after a week of experience.
It's difficult to pick up.
The Chinese don't make an evening out of the meal. They eat in a hurry, usually in about 30 minutes. The waiter comes to collect right after you get the food. You pay before you eat, and you don't tip. Our bill for 4 people was 9 yuan. That's about $3 American. Of course, U.S. currency is no good here, and neither is the Chinese money we had. Tourists are issued different currency from the locals. After much embarrassing scrambling, we discovered we didn't have enough of their money to pay the bill. Once again, the restaurant was kind enough to bend the rules and take our tourist dollars. Overall, the Beijing food tasted similar to what you'd eat in Mobile, except it wasn't quite as salty.
You live here in Beijing, you eat a lot of Chinese food. How is this?
Because in China, we cannot have many choice. So this food is only the fare.
If you want to eat authentic Chinese food, you have to do it early. It's now 8:15, and this restaurant, which was packed an hour ago, is empty. The staff is going home. All of the public restaurants in Beijing close by 8 o'clock.
When the restaurants close, the night is still young, the streets are still crowded. I went to find out what Chinese do for fun on a Friday night. I was told, not much. There are a lot of people moving around with no place to go. There are no bars, the restaurants are all closed. If you want to drink alcohol or dance, you do it at home with your friends. You can barter with the hawkers at night. This is one of the 2 streets which allow vendors to stay open after dark. They offer food, trinkets, and entertainment street style. I asked a young couple how they spend a date in Beijing. I was told they study and shop.
Is there some place where you can go to be alone and maybe kiss or have some fun?
有什么你们喜欢的地方？这可以溜达的，你们觉得挺高兴的去的地方？
公园、公共场所。
The place they go frequently is the park.
Go to the park to go parking. That's what we call it.
Yeah.
The couple said movies and concerts are popular with the Chinese. Rambo was a big hit here. The rock group Wham played to mixed reviews. It was a little flashy for the Chinese. Most entertainment is family-oriented, like this acrobatic show. For all of its attempts to modernize, China is still a very primitive country. This work crew is mixing homemade materials, a slow process. Modern equipment and antique tools work side by side, building the road to progress. Hotel laundry is still done by hand in some cities. There aren't any clothespin marks on the sheets. They're hung by twisted ropes. % of the Chinese lead a simple life. They live in rural villages and towns. China is an agricultural country covered with small farms. The Chu family farms outside of Beijing. They're part of a commune system. The government owns the land. They pay rent. The family can keep the profits from selling their crops at the market in Beijing. In a good year, they'll make 1,000 yuan per acre. The rent is 28 yuan per acre. The Chu's house is small and simple. The kitchen is outside, but there's a television set inside. Mr. and Mrs. Chu are the 5th generation of farmers. They say they make a good living, but they hope their children will move into the city and find an easier, more prosperous life.
Carolyn, you did a lot of interesting things, met a lot of interesting people. What was the highlight of the trip for you?
Well, Bob, I guess the most impressive thing that we saw was the Great Wall. We were able to spend about an hour and a half there. It was my favorite part of the trip, so I saved the best for last.
You can't go to China without seeing the Great Wall. It was built 2,000 years ago to keep out Asian invaders. Today it's being invaded by tourists from all over the world. It is the country's biggest tourist attraction. Only one section is open to the public, which has left its mark on the ancient relic. The wall is scarred with graffiti in a variety of languages. The Great Wall stretches 4,000 miles around China. As impressive as it is from the ground, it is even more so from the air. The Great Wall is the only man-made object visible from outer space.
This Great Wall symbolizes the patience and perseverance of the Chinese people. When you walk along these jagged mountaintops, you can understand why the Chinese have been around for so long. And you get a very strong feeling up here that no matter how the faces of this country change, like this Great Wall, the virtues of the Chinese people will remain for another 1,000 years.